Okay, so who out there hasn't felt like they're drowning in work lately? I know I have. And that's why we're diving into Bill Jensen's Simplicity Survival Handbook today
Oh, yeah, definitely a great book.
to see if he has any like genius solutions because I am ready.
For sure.
This book is all about working smarter, not harder. And
Absolutely.
I think we could all use a little more of that in our lives, right?
I think Jensen really nails it when he talks about why we feel so overloaded.
Okay, lay it on me.
You know that saying, like, work expands to fill the time a lot?
Oh, yeah, classic.
Well, he found that a lot of that complexity, it's actually created inside companies.
Hmm.
It's not just coming from outside pressures.
Wait, so you're telling me it's not just my inbox that's out to get me?
Right.
There's like a whole internal conspiracy going on.
Well, in a way, yeah.
Okay, I am all ears.
He quotes this automobile executive who admitted to always tackling the easiest tasks first.
Okay.
And it wasn't because they were the most important,
Mm-hmm.
but just because they were presented in a simple, clear way. And that really resonated with me because it means even those high-level execs are struggling with this, like feeling overwhelmed by complexity.
So how do we fix it? Like, do we all need to become master communicators overnight?
Well, in a sense, yeah, Jensen argues that like clear, concise communication is our secret weapon against this overload.
Okay, I'm listening.
He breaks it down into this no-feel-do model.
Right.
It's like a turbocharged version of that head, heart, hands approach you might have heard of.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically, you need to quickly give people the info they need to understand,
Okay.
connect with it emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
and then take action.
So no more like rambling emails or presentations that take an hour to get to the point.
Right.
We need to be like straight to the point.
He has this framework he calls CLEAR,
Okay.
which stands for Connect, List Actions, Expectations, Ability, and Return.
I like it.
It's catchy.
It's a checklist to make sure you're hitting all the key points.
So, like, how would I use CLEAR, say, in an email to my team? Let's say you're asking them to implement a new process.
Oh,
First, you'd connect it to their current work and explain why it matters.
got it.
Then you'd list the actions they need to take,
Okay.
outline the expectations for success,
Uh-huh.
address their ability to do it, like do they need training or resources?
Listen.
And finally, highlight the return, like what's in it for them.
What's in it for them or the company?
Exactly.
Okay, that's actually super helpful. I could already see how that would cut through the
Yeah,
noise.
yeah, and you don't need to read a novel to get your point across.
Right.
There's an example in the book of an email that was only 98 words and 10 sentences long, but he got the job done.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so speaking of getting to the point, Jensen also has some strong opinions about meetings.
Oh, yeah, he does.
I'm guessing he's not a fan of the 2-hour snooze fests we've all experienced.
He is not. He has this idea of be the example, run the meeting you wish to attend.
Hmm.
It's like we all have the power to change meeting culture one meeting at a time.
I love it. So instead of complaining about bad meetings, we should just like lead by example and show people how it's done.
Exactly.
But where do we even begin?
Jensen suggests asking 2 key questions before every meeting.
Okay, shoot.
What would behavioral success look like?
Okay.
And what needs to be accomplished by the end?
So instead of just going through the motions, you're really thinking about like how people should be interacting and what concrete outcomes you need to achieve.
Yeah, and he also emphasizes creating an open and inclusive environment.
Got it.
He tells a story about a 15-year-old who attended a TED conference with all these bigwigs.
Wait, a 15-year-old at a TED conference. What was the point of that?
It's all about creating a space where people feel comfortable speaking up, regardless of their age or experience.
That's a good point. Okay, so let's talk about something else that stresses us all out. That never-ending to-do list.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Does Jensen have any magical solutions for that?
He encourages us to become what he calls pushback zealots.
Pushback zealots. I like it.
Instead of blindly accepting every task, we should politely but firmly question why it's necessary.
So basically channel our inner toddler and ask why about everything.
Pretty much, he gives some great tactics for deflecting unwanted tasks.
Like what?
You could ask, why was I chosen for this? Or what would success look like? And these questions often reveal hidden agendas or help you understand the true purpose of the task.
It's all about being strategic with our time and energy, right? I'm thinking of the story in the book about Charlie, the master of smile and nod.
Oh, Charlie, he's a legend.
Right. He managed to retire comfortably by basically doing the bare minimum of unnecessary work.
He knew what was important and what wasn't.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the best way to get things done is to avoid doing things that don't actually need to be done.
I like that.
But what happens when you're stuck with a boss who just doesn't get it? The kind who piles on the work with zero clarity or prioritization.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
What do we do then?
Jensen outlines 3 paths you can take.
Okay.
Smile and nod like Charlie.
Okay.
Go around above.
Uh-huh.
Or exit.
Sometimes you got to take drastic measures.
Right.
And he gives a great example of this with Janice's story, right?
Yes. Janice felt like her boss was holding her back, so she went above him to get clear objectives.
Bold move.
And it worked. Her boss was eventually removed, and she got promoted.
Wow, talk about taking control.
Right.
But that takes guts. I'm guessing Jensen has some advice for how to navigate those tricky conversations with higher-ups.
He does, and it all boils down to framing your requests in a way that benefits them, not just you.
Oh, interesting.
Instead of complaining about your lack of resources, focus on how getting what you need will help the company achieve its goals.
Okay, so it's all about speaking their language and showing them the value. Do
Exactly.
you have a specific example?
He tells the story of Mayor Shirley Franklin, who inherited a $90 million deficit when she took office.
Oof.
But by framing her budget requests in terms of the city's long-term needs and potential cost savings,
Yeah,
she managed to erase the deficit in just 1 year.
that's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about communication meetings and navigating difficult bosses, but what about personal productivity?
Right.
Does Jensen buy into all those traditional time management tips and tricks?
He actually challenges a lot of those old school ideas.
Okay, so what's his take?
He's less about meticulously planning every minute and more about becoming a pushback zealot
There it is again.
and questioning everything that demands our time and attention.
So instead of trying to cram more into our day, we should be focusing on doing less, but doing it better.
Exactly.
I can get behind that.
He highlights 2 types of people who succeed with this approach: pushback zealots
Mm-hmm.
and insulated bosses who build systems to protect themselves from interruptions.
Okay, so which one are you?
Good question. I think I might be a bit of both.
Same here, actually.
But Jensen's point is that it's not about finding the one right way to manage your time.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out what works best for you and being strategic about how you use your energy.
I like that. And you know what? Speaking of energy, there's a quote from a healthcare CEO in the book that really stuck with me. He was talking about how most training programs fail to connect the dots for employees.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
They don't show them how their work fits into the bigger picture.
It's like giving someone a bunch of puzzle pieces without showing them the picture on the box.
Exactly. No wonder so many people feel lost and disengaged.
The executive actually said, "We're missing the opportunity to help people understand how all the pieces fit together."
Yeah, and Jensen has some pretty radical ideas for how to fix that. Remember his take on orientation for new hires?
Oh, yeah, forget the boring slideshows and company history lectures.
Right. He suggests giving them homework.
Homework.
Yeah, requiring them to meet 20 new people
Wow.
and then having a two-way review after 3 months.
It's like flipping the script entirely. Instead of passively absorbing information, they're actively engaging with the company.
And figuring out how they fit in.
It's a much more empowering approach.
And that leads us to another interesting concept Jensen introduces. The simpler work index.
Ooh, yeah, tell me more about that.
Okay, so what is that all about?
It's a completely new way of thinking about respect in the workplace.
Okay.
It's not just about being polite to your colleagues. It's about how companies use your personal resources, like your time, your energy, your knowledge,
Yeah.
and whether they do so in a way that feels respectful and fair.
So it's about more than just surface-level pleasantries. It's about creating a work environment that values our contributions and doesn't take us for granted.
Right.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these dimensions of respect.
Well, there are 6 of them: clarity, navigation, fulfillment of basics, usability, speed, and time.
Okay, break those down for me. What do they actually look like in practice?
Clarity is about having clear goals, expectations, and processes.
Okay.
Navigation is about being able to easily find the information and resources you need to do your job.
Makes sense.
Fulfillment of basics means having access to the essential tools and support you need. Usability is about making sure systems and processes are user-friendly and intuitive.
Okay.
Speed and time are about not wasting time with unnecessary bureaucracy and delays.
Yeah, that's key.
It's about respecting our time and allowing us to work efficiently.
This is fascinating. I'm already thinking about how my own company measures up on these dimensions.
And there's actually a survey you can take online to see how your company stacks up.
Oh, really?
You can find it at simplerwork.com.
Cool. I'm definitely going to check that out. I encourage all of you listening to do the same. This could be a real game changer in terms of understanding how our workplaces can better support us.
Absolutely. It's about advocating for ourselves and creating a more respectful and productive work environment for everyone.
So we've covered a lot of ground already, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of Jensen's work. But what stands out to you the most so far?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think for me, it's that idea of becoming a pushback zealot.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just get swept up in all the requests and demands.
Right.
But Jensen reminds us that we actually have the power to say no.
To like protect our time and energy.
Exactly.
It's like giving ourselves permission to push back against the chaos.
Yeah, and that's another area where Jensen really challenges the status quo.
Okay, tell me more.
The traditional performance review process.
Oh, yeah.
He argues that it's often more about just ticking boxes
Uh-huh.
than actually fostering genuine growth.
It's funny you say that because I always feel like those performance reviews are more about judging me
Yeah.
than actually helping me improve.
I think a lot of people feel that way, and Jensen says that real performance management should be about having these open and honest conversations,
Oh.
focused on individual strengths and goals and areas for improvement.
So like a dialogue, not a judgment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he tells this story about an executive who was so frustrated with his company's new automated performance review system.
Oh, yeah, what happened?
The executive felt like it was just this soulless box-checking exercise, you know? There was no room for real feedback or discussion.
Yeah, it's like the systems just totally miss the human element.
And that's Jensen's point. We need to move away from these one-size-fits-all approaches and create systems that actually help people grow.
It makes you wonder how many, amazing ideas and talents are being stifled by these rigid systems.
Right.
And speaking of development, Jensen also talks about how to make training more effective.
Oh, yeah. He's a big advocate for choosing programs that actually align with your personal goals.
Not just whatever the company throws at you.
Exactly. And he also stresses that connecting the dots is crucial.
What do you mean by that?
It's like too often training programs present these isolated solutions without showing you how it all fits together.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like giving someone a bunch of puzzle pieces without showing them the picture on the box.
Exactly. No wonder so many people feel lost and disengaged.
Right.
And this healthcare executive in the book, he put it perfectly. He said, we're missing the opportunity to help people understand how all the pieces fit together.
I love that it's about seeing the bigger picture and understanding how your work contributes to something larger than yourself.
And once you have that sense of purpose, you're naturally more motivated and engaged.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about all this doing less stuff.
Yeah.
But how do we actually get better at it?
Well, Jensen highlights 3 key areas:
Okay.
self-awareness,
Got it.
advocacy,
Uh-huh.
and user-centered communication.
So self-awareness, I get that it's about knowing your strengths and weaknesses and how you work best.
Right.
But what about advocacy?
Advocacy is about being able to communicate your needs effectively and pushing back against those unnecessary demands.
So it's about having the confidence to say, this isn't working for me, or
Yeah.
I need more support.
Exactly.
And then user-centered communication.
Yeah.
What is that? Is that just like another way of saying be clear and concise?
It's more than that. It's about really putting yourself in the other person's shoes and crafting messages that resonate with them. Remember that clear framework we talked about? That's a great example of user-centered communication.
So it's about understanding what your audience needs to hear and delivering it in a way that's clear, concise, and compelling.
Exactly. And Jensen encourages us to seek out opportunities to practice these skills.
Like what kind of opportunities?
Whether it's leading a meeting or giving a presentation or even just writing an email,
Okay.
it's about applying these principles to every aspect of our work.
And becoming more intentional about how we communicate.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about individual strategies, but what about creating a simpler, more productive workplace as a whole?
Yeah, that's important too.
Does Jensen offer any guidance for that?
He outlines 10 essential principles for creating a simpler workplace.
10 principles. Okay, what are some of the most important ones?
Well, one that really stands out is don't aim to manage more or manage better. Build better tools, training, and support for employees so they can better manage themselves.
Wow, that's a mouthful. But I love the sentiment behind it. It's about empowering people, not micromanaging them.
Exactly.
And he also talks about the importance of clear goals and open communication and a culture of trust and respect.
Those are key.
Another principle that I really like is business sophistication pushed down, work sophistication pushed up.
I like that one too.
It's about recognizing the expertise of people at all levels of the organization. Right.
Frontline employees often have the deepest understanding of how work actually gets done.
So we need to tap into their knowledge and insights.
Yeah, not just rely on top-down directives.
It's about breaking down those traditional hierarchies and creating a more collaborative and innovative work environment.
And I think that ties back to that simpler work index we discussed earlier.
Totally. When people feel respected and valued, they're more likely to share their ideas and contribute their best work.
And Jensen even advocates for giving employees more autonomy and control over their work environment.
Like how?
He cites the example of JetBlue, which allows its reservation agents to work from home.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
Not only does it save the company money, but it also increases employee satisfaction and retention.
It's a win-win.
And here's another point that really resonated with me. Jensen argues that the way we think about personal performance needs to evolve.
How so?
It's no longer enough to just meet corporate objectives and check things off a to-do list.
Okay.
We need to think about performance in terms of personal growth and fulfillment.
I like that.
He introduces this new set of criteria.
Which is,
Know me, know my work, know how to help me.
it's about companies understanding the unique needs of each employee and providing the support and resources they need to thrive.
It's about creating a more personalized and empowering work experience.
It sounds like a pretty radical departure from the way most companies operate today.
It does, but I think it's a vision worth striving for.
So we've talked a lot about creating a simpler, more fulfilling work life.
Yeah.
But how do we know when it's time to actually make a change?
Hmm.
Like whether it's pushing back against a task or advocating for ourselves or even considering leaving a company altogether?
That's a great question, and it's something Jensen addresses in his discussion of the stay or go decision.
Yeah. So when is it time to jump ship? I feel like so many of us are wrestling with that question these days.
Jensen gives us this really helpful framework for figuring that out.
Okay. I like frameworks laid on me.
He says you have to honestly evaluate your situation.
Okay.
How's your relationship with your boss? Does the company culture align with your values?
Mm-hmm.
Are there opportunities for growth? And most importantly, do you feel like you're making a meaningful contribution?
Yeah, it's about taking a step back and looking at the big picture.
Right, not just getting caught up in the day-to-day grind.
Because it's easy to do that.
It is, and he shares this story about a senior executive who is feeling totally burnt out even though she had this high-powered job and a big salary.
Wow.
She had lost control of her work life.
Mm.
And she felt like she was constantly being pulled in a million directions.
I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling of being overwhelmed no matter what our job title is.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that we all need to set boundaries.
Yeah.
And prioritize our well-being.
For sure.
And sometimes that means walking away from a situation that's no longer serving us.
So how do we know when we've reached that point? When it's truly time to move on?
Jensen says the decision to stay or go is ultimately about character.
Hmm.
It's about having the courage to stand up for what you believe in and make choices that align with your values.
So it's not about fear or ego.
Right.
It's about making a conscious choice that feels right for you.
Exactly. And he reminds us that we're all leaders.
Right.
Regardless of our official title,
Okay.
we all have the power to influence our work environment and create a more positive and productive culture.
So even if we're not the CEO, we can still make a difference.
Exactly. And speaking of leadership, Jensen has a whole chapter dedicated to the qualities of a simpler leader.
Okay, so what makes a leader simpler?
Well, they empower their teams,
Oh.
they foster open communication,
Yeah.
and they create a culture of trust and respect.
So not your typical command and control boss.
Not at all. They lead by example and focus on serving the needs of their team.
I like that it's about creating an environment where people feel valued and supported, not micromanaged and controlled.
Right. And he also emphasizes the importance of clear communication, emotional intelligence, and a commitment to continuous learning.
Those are good qualities.
These are qualities that any leader can cultivate regardless of their experience level.
I'm thinking of that example he gives about JetBlue CEO David Neeleman, who regularly works as a flight attendant.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
By serving snacks and picking up trash alongside his employees, he's not just setting a good example, but he's also gaining firsthand experience of what it's like to work on the front lines.
It's about being humble, staying connected to the reality of the work, and always looking for ways to improve.
Yeah, and that brings us to the heart of Jensen's message.
What's that?
He believes that work can be a source of joy, fulfillment, and meaning.
I like that.
But we have to be intentional about creating that experience.
It's not something that just happens.
Right. We have to actively work towards it.
We have to simplify our approach, focus on what truly matters, and create a culture that supports our well-being.
So it's not about doing less work.
Right.
It's about doing the right work in the right way.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that we have choices.
We do?
We can choose to stay in a situation that's draining us, or we can choose to create something better.
It's about taking back control and designing a work life that aligns with our values.
And that's where we'll leave you today, listeners, with a challenge to embrace simplicity, take back control, and create a work life that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
Remember, you have the power to choose.
Yeah.
You can choose to be overwhelmed by complexity, or you can choose to simplify. You can choose to stay stuck, or you can choose to grow. You can choose to be a victim of your circumstances, or you can choose to be a leader.
It's all about making conscious choices that lead you towards a more fulfilling and impactful work life.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Bill Jensen's Simplicity Survival Handbook. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling inspired to simplify your work and life. Until next time, keep diving deep.